So welcome to the Maintaining Consistency in Your Thesis webinar. Today is the outline of what we'll be covering, so the benefits of using a chapter template, but I've also sent, and as an example, a full thesis that is a template, but it's just got all the chapters included. So either way, you are following the benefits of the chapter template because when you bring it into it, all of the margins, headings are set up and page numbers so that it's all consistent for when you are finalizing the document. These settings will match the procedure of higher degree by research, thesis submission examination, and it also covers master students involved in that. And if we have any honors students watching, yes, all of this is suitable to transfer to your honors thesis. We will use the template and work with heading numbering, see how you can change it for each chapter and how it links to your figures and tables. You can also go in and change the template. We'll also start talking about fonts today. So if you don't like the font that's included in the templates, you can change them. We will have a break about an hour through, and then at the end, we will bring in some existing text into the template. I've got a chapter ready, so if during the break you want to have one ready, something on your computer to bring in, you can do that, or you can just watch and try that in your own time after today's session. So this is the concept I work with while I teach these sessions. The two files I sent you to work with today are used for teaching. They're not provided by ANU, but you're welcome to reuse them for your own thesis. So it helps you, as it says in step 1, to maintain consistency in your thesis. While you're doing your writing, it's beneficial to use a reference manager to organize and streamline your referencing process. So EndNote is available to download through the ANU portal, and you'll have the full license for EndNote 21 for Windows or Mac. Mendeley and Zotero are two other reference managers. Zotero's open source. Mendeley, there is an ANU license. You can contact me after today. I think in my summary email, I do have the link to the EndNote resources we have at ANU. Back over to the image. We use captions to generate our lists at the top of a thesis. We'll look at the caption style today, and that might be something you may need to modify in your template if you're not happy with how the training template today looks. Then next week's workshop, we talk a little bit more about all the other aspects of putting together your full thesis. 4 is up to you. I've provided 2 different templates today. One is keeping your chapters throughout the writing process, but I have given you a full thesis template also because I'm finding more students find that easier to work with. So it's up to you to decide which will work best for you. But either way, you still need to bring it all together and keep the consistency, which is what we work on today. The templates have the fonts built in and the styles of the headings, headings 1 through 5. Those will create your table of contents. All of the captions will create any lists that you require for your type of writing, but also using those styles will allow the navigation pane to work with you to help you move quickly through your chapter. So today I'm on a Windows computer, but I do have some screenshots for those of you on a Mac. When we get to the different images, I'll show those to you. When we look at the policy in the moment, we are following the margins required by ANU, and that's built into the templates today. You can work with headers and footers and page numbers. You can change what we're using today or keep it as is. So those are some options for you. And this is the demonstration of what we will create in regards to the coded chapter and the coded numbering and multi-list numbering. There are some colleges who don't use the numbering in the headings, so you're welcome to simply select no numbering. So that's something for you and your supervisor to discuss, what you will be using in your thesis. I will send a follow-up email with all these links. The policy, once I open it up, I will put it in chat if you want to bookmark the policy for yourself. So I'll just pop over to that actual policy and we'll go through it. So I'll just put that in chat. So this policy, as I mentioned, is for all the different types of higher degree research at ANU. And for those of you doing honors, you can still follow this, but do refer to your honors handbook that's provided by each college. Next week, we will focus on discussing again, but it'll be in one of the templates today, the title page and what is required of you. We're mainly focusing on being consistent with the format of our text today. So the policy 20A refers to our paragraphs. They are required to be double spaced or 1.5 spaced. Most candidates I work with do it 1.5 spacing, but if you are following perhaps APA, you may need to look at the APA style guide and you may require to change your paragraphs to double spaced. The last sentence is for all candidates is the single spacing you can use in your quotes, footnotes, and bibliographies. One of the new changes I've implemented today is changing the font. I've just been receiving a lot of questions lately about fonts. My older versions were in Arial, but I've moved to Aptos font today. It doesn't matter which font you use as long as it's part of the sans serif family of fonts. So I've got a screenshot of some fonts that fall into that category. For all digital thesis, your margins are 2.5 centimeters all around. And you save as a PDF and submit through your HDR milestone site. Or if you're master's or honors students, you're probably submitting through a different portal as per your college. And you may have different margins in honors thesis as the main difference from anything I've been teaching today. So do check with what margins are required. If in doubt, then just stick with 2.5 centimeters because at least you're following a policy at ANU. For those of you completing a thesis by compilation, you will, formatting wise, everything above applies to you. The separate procedure that is linked from this page just deals more with nothing to do with the actual formatting of consistency for today. So, but you do have the link available to you. So pop any questions you have in chat as we go along. But I'm moving on now to a sample of some fonts. So sample one is using Arial 11 point. Arial is a larger font, so Arial 12 would be too large. Well, my consideration, too large for paragraph writing such as this. So if you're using Arial, 11 point works better. This is a heading level 3 and it's in Arial 12 point. The second sample here is Aptos 12 point in both the heading and the paragraph. So if you can sort of look between the two, they look very similar in size, even though Arial is 11 and Aptos is 12. They're both 1.5 spacing. I think a lot of it just has to do with how the font in Word adds extra gaps between the lines. And last is Calibri. So that used to be Word's default go-to font when you would start up Word. So some people do prefer to keep it as Calibri. And once again, I've put this one in Calibri 12 point and 12 point in the heading. So today we're going to use Aptos 12 point in all of our templates we're working with. So next we're ready to go to our file space. When I had emailed the files to you, I mentioned to save them in a thesis template folder. So within all of your files that you're probably saving on OneDrive, just for my teaching purposes today, I've just shifted them to my desktop. I do recommend definitely saving it on OneDrive. And if you're not, and you're saving it on any desktop device, do make sure you back up to OneDrive or some external drive in case anything was to happen to your desktop. So you can see in the type column here, when I sent these to you, I've actually saved them as Word template. You need to always come to Windows Explorer to start using it, or in Mac, you go to your Finder and you double click to start using a template. That way, you never save over the template with accidentally starting to write your chapter or any purpose. So the reason we lock it down as a template is so that it keeps all its settings and you don't populate it with your own text. So today we'll start with the chapter number template, and we will then look at the difference of the other option afterwards. So we'll start writing chapter 1. If you double click thesis chapter number template, it will start up with chapter 1 already presented. And on your home tab, and this is the same on Mac and Windows, home tab, can everyone click on the show hide marker? It's next to the A to Z sorting. Click once and it will turn on every time you have a blank, blank lines under 1.1, but every time at the end of a row where you've pressed enter. I've set it flush to the coded chapter number 1. Now what I mean by coded chapter 1 is if you single click on the chapter 1, you can see it's coded, and same with 1.1, single click and then return to after the digit 1. So those are coded, meaning they've been set up with the multi-level list numbering. We'll look at that later, but for now we'll just populate it with some text so we can set up some text and see how everything looks in this template. With the word chapter 1, it's completely up to you how you design the layout. You can simply have a space bar and type your title, or you can do colon space bar and then type the name of your chapter heading. So I'm using chapter 1 colon spacebar introduction. Then I can simply click down onto 1.1 and start typing that heading now, and then we'll start talking about our paragraphs. So we might have our section 1.1 as our research problem questions. Once we're on the third row, we might take the time to open the 2 other panels we need to see how this works well. So we'll do the Home tab, and on the Windows, we're doing the Styles Launcher. So I'll give everyone a moment to find it. For those of you on Windows, Home tab and the Mini Style Launcher. For those of you on a Mac, just above where my arrow is sort of moving around, you have a Styles pane button. If you click that once, and you will get your Styles pane. So Windows, we're using the launcher, the tiny little arrows that are quite often in a lot of the buttons today, ribbons, and Mac, you're using the Styles pane. The next one is going to be our navigation. It's on our View tab, and you can see the Mac on the right-hand side. Mac, tick box the navigation pane, but where the red square is, you'll need to select to get your headings to show up. Like my example has, it's the second panel in. So everyone on their View tab should now be able to find their navigation tick box. Windows, you don't have to do anything. Your navigation should be showing your headings like mine. But for those of you on a Mac, these 2 toggle buttons are basically opposite. So Mac, you will click your second one and you'll see your headings. So now that we're on our third row, make sure your cursor is placed on the third row. You can see body text thesis has a border around it on my styles pane. It's set for you to start typing, but don't worry, I have a formula you can insert to populate it with some text. I'll put it in chat. If you type, I'll just pop it in chat first. Equals RAND open bracket 10, 10, close bracket, and then press enter on your keyboard, and it'll populate with some 6 pages of text for us to work with. Now that we have our navigation pane open, you can click back on chapter 1 and it takes you back up to the top of the chapter. Might just make my window a bit smaller. There we go. And you can see our paragraphs are in body text thesis. I've chosen for it to be full justified. Full justified means Word puts in the little extra spaces to stretch out so it's flush along the right-hand side. If your preference is for it to be left, I'll just click to show everyone. That's what left looks like with the jagged right-hand side because it's aligned to the left. That would be a change you would make to the template when we talk later this morning about that. So these are your paragraphs. And what I've done is at the end of a paragraph, you only have to click once, and there's an 18-point gap before the next paragraph starts. As you scroll through, you can see those gaps so that the paragraphs are nicely defined. What I might do now is take a moment just to show you why these are important. So this next part, you don't have to replicate, you just watch. When you start a brand new Word document, and I open my styles pane, my text is ready to type, and it's in normal. And you see the difference. If I was to type my whole thesis in normal, there's no gaps after the paragraphs, and the line spacing is set at single. So you would have to go through and change it all the time to 1.5. You'd have to add the gap, and you may have to press enter a few times, which is, a bit difficult. So that's why, 2 reasons. We don't modify normal style. That's why I created a brand new paragraph style and populated it into the template we're using today that's set to go for writing a thesis. I hope that makes sense of why we're doing this today. So that's why your paragraphs are all meeting the ANU requirement. As I said, the justification, completely up to you what you prefer. So this is full justified, and you can modify it to left, and we can do that as part of our exercise later this morning. So chapter 1 has a page number at the bottom corner, and it has a heading on the tops of each page. This does make it more complicated, and that's why we'll be using the simpler version later to see what works best for you. If you wish to stay with this, the reason you can see chapter hashtag on one side and chapter title on the right side. I'm just going to demonstrate why that is. It is a, oh, sorry, I've just lost the PDF I had open. Maybe it is open. Is it good? Here it is. Yes, here it is here. So this is a PDF of the chapters using this chapter template. So the first page has no header, and page number 1 is at the bottom corner. And then at the top of page 2 is chapter 1 and research context. It looks nice when you print it. And of course, even though it's an online submission, you still will be printing copies. So this design has every chapter you have to change it. So I'll just zoom in. The top of the page here, chapter 1, and over here is the chapter name of research context. Then when you finish your chapter, you definitely need to have a special section break and start on an odd page so that chapter 2 always begins on. So page 6 is blank with no page number. And then page 8 and 9 have our chapter 2 water quality headings reappear. So if that's something you're after, you'll continue using this version today. But today's purpose still does teach us how to use a template. So returning back to our chapter, we now need to edit these headers. So if you find the one called chapter hashtag, you need to select that and put in the digit 1. Let's make that bigger for you. Oops, sorry, chapter 1 with space there. This style, if you highlight it, you can look on your styles pane. Just carefully scroll up and down in your styles pane. If you were to click anything, it would apply it. If you accidentally do that, press undo on your top of your Word document. This is a style called header, which I have set up to be Aptos 10 point. If you hover over your style, you can see there, and it's got a 12-point gap after and a bottom border of a solid line. So that's actually built into the header. So if you wanted to change the font to something else, you would modify this to change it throughout. Same with the footer. I've used the style of footer, which is Aptos 10 also. So your paragraphs are in 12 point, but I thought the header and footer don't need to be as large text. Next, we scroll down to the opposite side of the page of chapter title, and we just highlight it and retype introduction so we don't mess up the line underneath and that 12-point gap. Then you can go back to your header footer toolbar and close header footer. It's probably time to save chapter 1 because when we started it, which I forgot to cover, you can see it's just called document 1. So now we save it as a normal doc, and you probably should have, when I'll demonstrate naming structure, a folder with all your chapters, of course. You can put the date, so 20th, 11/24, and this one was chapter 1, introduction. Just chapter 1's probably fine. You don't need the name of it. I'll probably save mine to my desktop today, if that's going to allow me. Let's save chapter 1. So now that's a Word doc, no longer template, because it was just a template to execute it to get to here, this point today. So chapter 1, sorry, I just moved my headings, and then we'll talk more about all these headings we had set up. When we started the template, heading 1 was started, and then heading 2 is 1.1. At any time, you can adjust it, but you would always only start, if you're doing individual chapters, you always start the file with heading 1, and there will never be another heading 1 in a chapter. You would always, there would be heaps of heading 2s, which we're about to do, but they will never return to a heading 1 in a chapter. Chapter 2 in a different file will be our next chapter. So we have more headings to set up. We might do our, we obviously don't have a gap for it, so we need to find a suitable place, maybe after the sidebar paragraph. Press enter, and we will apply another heading using, you can either type it first or turn on heading 2 on the sidebar. So if you go over to your styles pane and click heading 2 once, you should get 1.2. And we're still in our introduction, so we might pose our next heading to be the, just looking at my demo, we can call this one the thesis overview. And now on your navigation pane, you have 1.2. Then on the next page, we can apply one more heading 2. And that's going to be the, sorry, just lost my, let's fix that with background research. So as we go through, your page numbers are already populated and the header is flowing through all 7 pages. When we finish, because there isn't 7 pages, when we actually finish the chapter, we have some extra page breaks. This is also why we're working with our show hides today to see our page breaks. So find the extra page breaks and backspace them and finish your chapter. Mine finishes on chapter 4. Yours may or may not be the same. So that's chapter 1. We will save that. Auto saves on, but save. And then we will return back to our thesis template folder and execute thesis chapter number template and do our chapter 2. Maybe we'll do right away. We have to change the numbering because every time you do execute it, it will revert back to coded chapter 1. So we do the Home tab. This is the same on Mac and Windows. Home tab, bullets, numbering, but we want the third one over and we do the drop down arrow. So I'm doing the third one over, and if you follow my screen, we're looking for define new multi-level list. Don't highlight any of the dark gray and change the numbering. We always need to find a start at button, like I'm flashing on my screen. On the Mac, yours will be up in the middle section. Oh, cancel, sorry. On a Mac, yours will be in the middle section. On Windows, you have to click the More button and change that start at to 2. Sorry about that. Hopefully that worked well. Coded start at, once you change the start at to 2, all your coding will change to 2. And then press OK. So now we're in chapter 2, methods, 2.1, introduction to methods. And on the third line again, you can copy and paste from chat equals rand 10, 10 and press enter. So introduction to methods, 10, equals rand 10, 10, press enter and you get more paragraphs. We can then do some heading 3s in this chapter. I've lost my styles pane. I've still got my navigation. So just for those who, if anyone's lost their navigation pane, starting chapter 2, view tab and tick navigation pane. Home tab, Windows is the style launcher. For those of you on Mac, it's the word styles pane. So now we need to add a heading 3 this time. So break that first paragraph where it ends with need them. Heading 3. And we can call this one methods chapter overview. And then we can break that again, do another heading 3. Brief review of research and questions. And then at any time, we can return back to a heading 2. So on the next page, we might apply a heading 2. As I said, this time I'll type the text itself, and then I'll apply heading 2. So anywhere, I can put my cursor on the little design and apply heading 2. Going through, you can obviously continue doing headings. I've set this up to come through all the way to heading 5. So if we apply a heading 3, it's called survey data, heading 3, to see what I've set up for the design. So heading 2 is 14 point. Heading 3 seems to still be in Calibri. Oh, sorry about that. I thought we changed the template. We'll change that in our template. Heading 3 is in 12-point italic. And then let's change that to heading 4. It's in italic without bold for a heading 4. Heading 5 is simple, no bold or no italics, 12. So as part of our revision today, we will change heading 3 level to Aptos, because I missed that in the update I've done to this template. So those are and you can see the numbering increase accordingly. This is now chapter 2, so we should save it. It's 2011, 24, 2. Chapter 2. So we now have our headers to do. So looking at the gray line at the top of the page, chapter title, we simply highlight the word chapter title and type methods. And then we can go up to the opposite side and change the chapter numbering to the digit 2. We now need to return to the text. So you have the header footer. You can close header footer at the top there, or just double click to bring you back into the document. And we have a few page breaks to remove at the bottom of the chapter. So that's chapter 2, all set to be we're going to, in our next session next week, insert some images and work with captions. So we'll reuse these types of chapters at the next workshop. So those are 2 chapters using the template. We now we'll go over to the thesis template I've created. We double click, and this one, if you turn on your navigation pane, navigation is on the View tab. And Home tab is your styles launcher. These have the same styles as our chapters. It has a few new ones when we get to declaration. It has now a title style because the word declaration acknowledgements aren't coded chapters. That's why I'm highlighting them to show you. So we can't use heading 1, but we use the style you can see on the styles pane called title, and it's Aptos 16 point. Chapter 1 down here looks very similar to what we just did in our template. So it's the same concept. And you can see on the navigation pane, I've already set up all the chapters within it. I've actually used intro and conclusion as standalones, but we can change that or delete them and just start with chapter 1. And I've populated areas for all of your appendices and bibliography. So if this is something that might be of interest to you, you can take your current, you can start writing directly in it, or you can keep all your chapters in your files at the moment, and then later in the process, bring it in here. It depends on how you like to work, but at least you sort of know it's all set up and easy to apply. You will still need to use the body text thesis style, which is in this document. And when I bring in my chapter later, you will see how easy it is to quickly apply to previous writing. So this one here is heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, and heading 5. So it's all the same as before. And all the page numbers, I've just done it the easy way. So I find some students prefer this. So Roman numerals were already set up in the preliminary pages, which is what we will do next week. And in introduction, if you're not using introduction and you just want to start with chapter 1, everyone can just simply highlight those and press delete. Introduction uses that title style, which is similar to what I showed you on declaration and acknowledgements. So here's our coded chapter 1. And we type introduction. If you were to start a paragraph here, I've just said you use body text thesis. If not, you delete and start right into heading 2, which is what we did in our previous chapter. We now need to set up our methods on chapter 2. And chapter 3, we haven't set up, but what I'm demonstrating is, that page number moved to, they're supposed to be in the center. That's interesting. Page numbers were supposed to be in the center, but I think they've moved a little bit. So we can just double click on the page number and move it on the Home tab to the center in this section where the number 1, 2, 3 started. Close header footer. Make sure that locked in. So, yep. So this is the version with the chapters all set up to go. And if you had more than chapter 4, you would go to conclusion, and you can see this is a title style. If everyone could change that to a heading 1. So just single click any word on the word conclusion and change to heading 1. And if we actually give it a different name for a chapter 5, maybe call it discussion, not conclusion. Now it's a coded number. So then we can use a heading 2. And this is a good example. I wanted to do that on purpose to show you if you accidentally turn on a heading on a sentence, like I just did accidentally, you can either do undo, which is at the top of your window. It'll take it back. Or I'll do it again. If I turn on heading 2, you would simply look at your styles panel, move up and down, and find body text thesis. And it fixes the problem. You also have at the very top a clear all, but a clear all, unfortunately, turns it back to words normal. Remember, we're not using word normal. So that's why I sort of say go to body text. In our template, we've also got a few styles in both templates we were using this morning. I forgot to mention on the other one. Thesis, table, and figure, and a source. The source will be used under a figure or table where you want to do referencing, so that it's not body text thesis would make your text look 1.5 spacing. So if you have a source that you just want single spaced and no large gaps around, you will use source. So we'll do that with our tables next week. And same with the thesis, table, and figure. If you were to insert a table at the moment with body text thesis, it's quite large. So I've created this thesis table style quickly to minimize it. And the whole point of showing you those is if there's something you do on a regular basis other than headings, captions, and body text or the tables, you can add a style to your document at any time. So I'm just going to delete that table. And then we can just reapply heading to our discussion of question summary. And then you return back to body text thesis by default. So when you do type manually, at any point when there's a heading, you hit return, it will start typing in body text thesis automatically. So that's our full thesis. So if we save that, and we might just put the 20th 11/24 thesis and save that. And we might pause the recording now and come back in 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when I start recording again. And then we'll edit the template. All right, so we're back to chapter 2 and talking about all the styles. We're going to fix chapter 3 because it's got the wrong font. And we're going to fix it in the template. But if for some reason you started using a template and you did have incorrect headings, you could change it after the fact. So I might demonstrate this now as a teaching part of today. So this heading 3 is incorrect. And if I go on the styles pane, there's a little drop down to modify. I'm changing it to be consistent to Aptos from Calibri, and the bold and italic are fine. I'm just going to check this bottom drop down, format paragraph. Yes, it's 18 point after, so that's correct, and say okay and okay. So now it's changed this to Aptos, but every other, by automatically, it's gone through and changed all the rest of the heading 3s to Aptos now. So now my heading 3 is consistent. But what my theory is from today is you change the template to what styles you would like for font and everything, and then start using it. Because if you're going to keep all these chapters, say 7 of them separate, you'll have to change every chapter independently. Yep. So I'll go back and do that again. So I'll just change it back. So as I said today, accidentally, this heading 3 wasn't updated and it defaulted to Calibri for some reason, not to Aptos. So heading 3 has a little drop down arrow in the navigation pane and we can modify. Heading 3, and the only thing we need to change here is the font and say okay. Now heading 3 is Aptos 12 and it goes through this whole document. And that's the thing, is it does not go back to chapter 1. So chapter 1, I would need to open it up and modify heading 3. So that's why I'm saying is we want to have our templates all lined up before we start using it. Okay, the only thing I forgot to demonstrate is quote. So in your writing, if you're using indented quotes, I'll just break this paragraph. Scrolling carefully on our, under heading 9, then we have title, and down here we have quote. So if you click once on quote, it's done the default of 1.52 from either side, right and left, which I like. There are some writing styles that only indent from the left. So if that would impact what you want, you would modify quote when we do that in the next step. But for now, I think that looks quite good. If you needed to reduce the space and have this closer to the previous paragraph for any reason, if it was part of that idea, you have your layout tab and you can see there's an 18-point gap. You can reduce that to 6 if that's suitable. So that's a manual thing, unfortunately. You have to do the odd times with your layout tab is to adjust your spacing after as needed. So that's our quote. I'll turn off the show hide so we can see how it looks and if that's of use to you in your writing. There's other ways you could italicize it. You could make it double spaced if you felt you wanted to, but as I said, the policy at ANU says it can be single spaced, so I've done it single spaced. I guess double spaced would make it look like that, as opposed, sorry, not double spaced, 1.5 spacing would make it longer. So I guess that's why tighter of single space looks nicer for a quote. So that's chapter 2 now with a quote inserted, so we can save that. To edit the template, and this will be in your instructions after today, we have to be in Word and open the template, because remember when we double clicked it, we actually just started using it. So if you're in any document and you want to edit the template and make some changes, we go to File, Open, and go to your desktop or wherever you saved yours. Desktop, desktop. Teaching thesis template. So we're going to our thesis template. Oh, sorry, I did that very quickly. I'll do again. File, open. Go to where you saved your files. And mine was in the thesis template on my desktop. And click here to open it, which is what I just did. At the moment, you can see it was last saved on the 19th at 3 p.m. So when I do save it with these changes, this will be reflected in our file saving. So you double click yours. Mine's already open. Where'd it go? Yeah, it's here. Oh, sorry, I'll come back in. Okay, so now I'm actually in the live file. If you look at the top, so we don't type any text. We only modify any of the formatting you did not want to, you wanted to change. So do your styles launcher or your styles pane. Go to heading 3, modify. Change it to Aptos. So heading 3, drop down, modify, change to Aptos, and say OK. We don't apply it, we were just modifying it in the list. And we keep our cursor here when we save and close. If you were going to, if there's anything else you didn't like in the document, if you don't want, oh, let's check our page number. Oh yeah, that's these ones are on the outside. In our other template, we were just putting them in the center. But if for any reason you don't want to utilize the header and footer, you could delete it from here and just have a simple chapter document if you want to do that instead. So that's also gives you that opportunity to modify the template. Pop any questions in chat before I save and close this if you wanted me to demonstrate any specific type of change you would make, like your quote, for instance. If anyone wants to change theirs to 1.5 on the quote, you would go down to quote, drop down, modify. I'm not going to do mine, but you can. And it's on single, you could change it to 1.5 and press OK, but I'm pressing cancel on mine, so it's fine. Press save then if there's no other edits, and close that because that's your template. So then if I look at my thesis template, yes, you can see the time has now changed to this morning. So that's been modified. Next is the same process. If you want to, you have to be in Word. So be in Word, File, Open, Go down to our now go to my desktop. Thesis template, thesis, and open. Let's check that page number on, those are in the center. When we start page 1, there we go. Home tab, and move that to the center. There we go. And those should all now be in the center, nice and simple. Header, footer, close that. So what I've done now is I've altered my thesis template for the full thesis version, and I've put the page number in the center. Put your cursor back up, maybe underneath. And just while I'm here, ANU's given me the logo, but it needs to stay in this positioning on the page. So don't stretch it or move it to the left or right. Just leave it there, please. Save and close thesis. So now, once again, if you were to execute the thesis one, it should in chapter 1, yes, have the page numbers in the bottom center now. So that's been corrected. Next example was executing the template and bringing in a file of our own. This will now be chapter 3. And we go to our home page. So I've executed just to remind everyone, sorry, I've executed the chapter number template to create a blank document. Home tab. Third one over is multi-level lists drop down, define new multi-level list. So home tab, when I say the third one over, bullets, plain numbering, and the third one over is multi-level list numbering. Second from the bottom, define new multi-level list. On Windows, you select the More button and go to the Start At and change it to digit 3 here. On the Mac, in the center area, it just says Start At 3 and change it there. Start at and change it up to 3 at that point and say OK. So everyone should have chapter 3. Put your cursor on that third line of body text thesis, and then we're ready to insert the other works you've been writing. You can simply open it up, Control A to copy, and then paste it in here. But just in case you want to use this function, it's just, I guess, that one level secure because it inserts the file and you know it gets everything in case you missed anything. Insert in the Windows computer, over to the far side, we have a function called insert. Over to the far right, before equation and symbol, you have these little icons. There's a drop down, text from file. It will grab the text from a file of everything and bring it in. So I had written chapter 3 to be named, and I'm going to insert it so it'll grab the whole entire chapter. I'm just going to go open that chapter to show you what it looked like beforehand. This is what it looked like beforehand. It was in Calibri light blue. It was still a heading. And same with integration. It was a heading too. So if you in your own writing have been using the headings, when it comes into the template, it will accept our new headings of Aptos black font as opposed to this blue font. So you'll see that. This paragraphs are all in normal of Times New Roman. Talking back about fonts, there are some candidates across campus who still do use Times New Roman. So if you pull up your supervisor's thesis, when it was print version, the norm was to use Times New Roman, but because we've moved to online submission, the examiners are reading it online and Times New Roman is deemed not as readable online, so they have recommended to go with sans serif fonts. But I do know a lot of candidates who still use it if you and your supervisor would like to stay with Times New Roman. And here's a heading 3 and some little tiny heading 4s of rainstorms. So I had used the heading levels. So let's see now what it looks like when I brought it into the template. It went a bit crazy at the top, which is fine. And that's actually what I want to show you for teaching purposes. There's my chapter 3 to be named, and it was Calibri light in blue, but it acquired the heading 1 in our template. Same with heading 2, and looking at my navigation pane, even down to rainstorms, that looks much better than it looked like before. Our paragraphs are still normal, Times New Roman. And what I mentioned earlier is to show you an easier way to sequentially go through and adjust that. So looking at our chapter 3, we have 2 heading 1s. And remember earlier I said we don't really ever have 2 heading 1s. So I would like to delete 1 and keep 1. And same with this heading 2s, I don't need them. So the easiest way might just be to change things to body text thesis. So I go to this chapter 3, turn on body text thesis, this heading 2, body text thesis. And this one's coded and this one's manually typed. So you can delete the manually typed, but careful not to delete the coded. But as you're backspacing, it does happen sometimes, and simply press undo or reapply heading 1 and it'll come back to life. Put your colon in and we can call this one results. We don't need this one, so change it to body text thesis, then maybe delete it and delete any extra paragraph markers you have to tighten everything up. So next is tidying up our paragraphs. So if you go to the first one, now it depends on how your document looks that you brought in, but most likely it's probably in normal. You just need to single click on that paragraph and click body text thesis. If you had italic in here, if you're using italics for scientific or referencing for artwork. If I single click and turn on body text thesis, it remains. But let me undo. If I highlight it all and apply body text thesis, oh, it kept it today, but most of the time it doesn't. so that's not the best example, but you don't need to select the whole paragraph. You just need to single click and turn on body text thesis to all of your paragraphs. So if you zoom it, you can then quickly see all your paragraphs and single click as you go through a whole chapter. You need to, the reason you can't do Control A is your headings would disappear. But if you haven't used your headings yet, you could apply it throughout globally. So as you can see, it doesn't take long. Go through your document, each paragraph. That's the end of the document. So our headings look much nicer, but we have an extra gap. When I say an extra gap is the way I've created the template, because I've placed an 18-point gap, you don't need all these extra markers. So a lot of candidates get feedback from their examiners that sometimes they have large gaps, sometimes they don't. So that is one thing you sometimes do get critiqued on. So I've created this template so that you only press enter once. You have a heading, you press enter once, and you write your paragraphs with just one marker in between them. And that way you won't get marked down for inconsistent spacing throughout. And we delete our extra page breaks at the bottom. And lastly, we do our header in the header line. So this was chapter 3. And chapter title, highlight it, and results. Close header footer. And if you have any quotes, you can apply them. And next week, we will do figures and tables into this document and practice with the captions. You can save this chapter if you want to keep it on your computer. And then that is all for this session. So I will stop the recording and then answer any questions or re-demonstrate anything.